So, after an up and down year, we have had two genuine bangers in a row. Can we make it three? I've got to admit, we've got a decent chance with this one. Some intriguing matchups here, sprinkled in with what looks like some absolute mismatches. We know our sport though, anything can happen. Now, there are one or two on the card here that I won't be covering until they are confirmed, so look out for the breakdowns of those on Twitter. So the Santos and Ferreira and Al Hassan fights, if confirmed, look out for them. Let's just get into the ones that are. I don't work by the goddamn hour here. Alright, weird this one. I don't know why this has been booked. Brito is explosive with some wins against decent opponents, while Wilson, on the other hand, is making his UFC debut while he's a few years away from picking up a free bus pass and has lost to some absolute dead food. Makes perfect sense. Wilson does have a height advantage, which generally means fuck all in MMA, and while he does have a few submission wins on his less than impressive record, this still feels like a horrible mismatch. Wilson is basically a karate specialist, and they are either outstanding or so soy. I think Wilson is going to get buried here, and it's likely to be ugly. Anything can happen in MMA, but this would be a shocker. KO in the first is a likely outcome here. Brito is the pick, but at these odds, is it worth a play? You'll have to remortgage to make a packet of peanuts. Avoid, in my opinion. Sheesh. This one is more tricky than it looks. A lot of people are picking Romanov, but I'm going to ignore this and pick a distance play on this one. Early on in his UFC career, Romanov looked like an absolute serial killer, getting some impressive forearm chokes, which you just don't see that much, and that had a lot of people picking him as a future champ. Fast forward to his last few, and he gasses against Tybura and gets dealt with by an even more embarrassing and cowardly spanking against Volkov, who dusted him in double time without even a whimper. Absolutely embarrassing. Now, while Ivanov does look like a fat mess, he's actually not terrible. I thought he beat Lewis, and he is never an easy day at the office one way or another. If Romanov can't starch him in the first round, I think this is going to get ugly. And with the way judging has been lately, I don't love these odds. For that reason, I'll be playing it to see the scorecards at plus 2.5. Now, usually my golden rule with women's MMA is just to generally avoid it like the plague and go with a distance play. And while I do think that's a good shout here, I will never forgive Karolina for making Meatball McCann go viral and making her believe she's actually a decent fighter. Karolina's coming off 2 losses to Joanne Wood and the aforementioned Toilet Bug. And while she did beat Lupita Godinez prior to that, I don't care. Miracles happen. Petrovic, on the other hand, is 6-0, which is a concern at 29 years old, but she does have some amateur experience and showed in her last fight that she can still finish girls late. I think this will go the distance, and while that is the safety pick, I think Petrovic will do it by decision, and that might sprinkle a little bit of extra on there in terms of value. Karolina usually tries to use a reach advantage to point fight, and she doesn't have any advantage here, or the grappling game. Take the distance, but Petrovic to grab it if you are feeling frisky. This is another baffling matchup. We know why it's happening though. Both men had cancelled bouts, so naturally the UFC has just said, fuck thinking too deeply on this one, let's just match them. And to be honest, they've kind of done Brenner a bit dirty here. Kutateladze was supposed to be fighting Malarkey, who I think is absolutely crap. And despite what people are saying, I think Brenner is a tougher matchup than him. On the flip side, Brenner thought he was getting in there with LGBT's representative Levitt, who, let's be real, just fights in the UFC so he can cheat on his wife in public, and instead gets Kutateladze, who is a heterosexual wrecking ball. He should... shout out to Jordan, I do love you, really. I did pick Brenner against Tukagov and got laughed at mercilessly, but this is such a massive style mismatch shift for him, with little preparation time, that this could be brutal. I like Brenner, and he does pose a threat. How bad was the injury that forced Kutateladze out of the Malarkey fight a few weeks ago? We just don't know. It's not like he was running scared to fight that bum. The odds, I feel, are a little bit disrespectful here. Brenner is tough, which gives this one 0 value in my book, even as a parlay fluffer. Guram should get this one done though, but it wouldn't shock me if Brenner stuck around for the duration. Alright, next we have the return of Kevin Lee, and the proof we needed that the top UFC brass really hate this man. Early on in his UFC career, Kevin Lee notched up some great wins against very good opponents. He got Gregor Gillespie by one of the nastiest high kick finishes in recent memory. He beat Chiesa in the first, somewhat controversially, who turned out to be decent. Barbosa, he beat Mustafayev. I could go on. But he just seemed to be sipping his own Kool-Aid at times and would come crashing down to earth when things really got real. It's also hard to forget that in his last fight, he made Diego Sanchez look like he's in his prime, and that's just embarrassing. Renat, on the other hand, hasn't lost since 2014, and recently beat the absolute piss out of Brian Battle, who was actually very decent, made him look like a heavy bag in there. On top of that, Kevin Lee is just not a welterweight. I think the first round will be close until Renat starts finding the mark and takes over. Question is, can Lee make it to the final bell? Generous odds for Renat here, who I can't see dropping this one. For me, that's the play. Welcome back, Kevin Lee. Get back in there with a filthy animal. The UFC is working some fuckery here. Alright, this one's pretty straightforward. The Bonfims are absolute savages, and while Saint-Denis does have a lot of heart, he's essentially a tough guy scrapper and will not have the skill set here to deal with a martial artist that can do this anywhere. This is booked to make Bonfim look good against an opponent that is game, and while Saint-Denis has the ability to catch you, he's more a volume guy, and I think Bonfim is going to win this wherever he wants it to. I think they exchange on the feet for a while, and then Bonfim ends up decking him and finding a finish on the ground, probably in the second. This is a nice parlay fluffer here, which can be boosted if you pick a Bonfim finish. Taking him on the line is a safe bet though, as far as MMA goes. Alright, for a women's fight, this one is not god-awful, just moderately awful. The issue for me in this one is the consistency issue. Lipski is a little bit too hot and cold for me, and Gatto, despite coming off a loss, has taken a break to work on things and should be more skilled and consistent. She has a better takedown game and should be better stand-in slightly. Should you ever bet on a women's fight at minus 250? Well, no. Should you ever bet on a female fight at any odds, really? Unless the person's named Zhang, hell no. I've turned this franchise around on women's MMA bad picks by not looking at the flames and saying, oh, that's really nice, and then sticking my hand in there. And I suggest you take the same approach if you don't want to end up living under a goddamn bridge. Gatto is better and should win, but a decision again is what I'd go for. Next. Again, I think the odds here are kind of disrespectful. Griffin can crack and is very, very dangerous and might actually be a live dog at plus 200. Morales, while he is an excellent prospect, is very young and hasn't exactly got a CV of very strong names. These odds are purely based on potential and not much else, and according to the eye test, Morales does seem like the play. He did make tough work of Fugit though, who Mallet made look like a small child in there. He's a competent grappler and striker, and if he can beat Griffin convincingly, then we can start talking about him. If I'm you, this is a very risky one. I do think the under is a better play here because they should find each other pretty hittable. This is likely to stay standing and someone is going to Nappy Town. For me, that's the safer bet than taking the inexperienced Morales straight up. I'd go under 2.5 on this. I'm just going to say this out loud. Grant Dawson is not that good. Ismagulov, his only loss came in 2015, and it was to Arman, who just looked like the truth last weekend, and somehow looks even better than we all thought. And he took that man to a decision and did not look like a fish out of water. In the meantime, Dawson is taking until the third to get rid of Jared Gordon, went to a draw with Rick Glenn, who just went on to have a coffee date with The Undertaker in his next fight, and just seems to be make a fucking meal out of everyone. Ismagulov has fought tough opponents all the way up, is a better striker and is tough to take down and keep down, which is Dawson's main wheelhouse. I think Dawson will look okay early and then fade and get pieced up. I'm going to go with a lopsided decision win for Ismagulov. Dawson is mid despite what his record suggests. Demir is not getting finished here either, so I like those odds. Alright, I'm going with Sean Strickland, my G's, and for me the reasoning is simple. Strickland loses this if he plods forward like a Mong into a firefight, and I think getting starched by Alex Pereira was the best thing that could have happened for him. Abbas is a danger in the first round, but Sean has relentless pressure and cardio, and despite looking a little bit goofy at times, is very effective, and I just think he works Abbas outside the first round here. Sean's not really a finisher, and I don't expect that here, but I think we see a reasonably close first while they feed each other out. Then Strickland just pieces him up for the next 4 rounds to a clear decision. I think he beat Jared Cannonier, who just scored Vettori, and he made Ivanov look way worse than he is. Strickland is a dog that doesn't quit, and I'll never pick against him unless he's fighting against someone with clear intangibles. Abbas is not that guy. For me, Strickland is the play here, and I take it to go the distance. Alright, so the yearly record is 156-76. Very respectable. Do your best to find out somewhere else, I dare you. So that retains me a win percentage of 67%. As always, thanks to everyone for checking in. We've had a decent boost in subscribers recently. Hopefully we can keep that up. Have a great rest of the week, and I'll catch you on Saturday to react to this card. Have a great one.